Welcome back. I'm glad to see you. Before we get into Module 3, Lesson 1, I'd like to hear how perception checking has been working for you. Have you used it? Has it been used with you? Has it helped to avoid misunderstandings? And how about the agreement to always tell each other the truth? Sometimes that can be hard, but in the long run, it is really important. And then please continue to be aware of using allowing versus judgmental language. The goal of this lesson is to allow your heart to be softened with understanding as you listen from the other person's point of view. In this lesson, I'll be answering the question, are you really listening? And what will real listening do for your marriage? Why should I repeat what I hear? Falling in love brings with it the sensation, even the certainty that finally I am known and loved. I belong. I can face life with this person by my side. We are one. This stage of a relationship is called romance. At this stage, we are largely unconscious of the work that is ahead of us in order to make this love last. And then a few weeks or months later, the reality of mismatched sexual needs, night owl versus early bird, neatnik versus slob, someone casual about handling money versus a budgeter or saver, these differences begin to raise their ugly heads, conspiring to separate us, drive us into opposite camps on various issues. For many, if not most couples, the need to adjust to each other's foibles introduces the battle of, I'm right, you're wrong, my way of doing things is better, your way won't work. This stage of the relationship raises areas of conflict that may seem to threaten your love. At first, conflicts breed a sense of distance, the opposite of connection, and we feel the loss. Nothing, not even sex, will give us the comfort of connection more than someone who gives us the gift of effective, caring, deep listening. Learning the skill of listening to understand launches the relationship into the conscious mutual healing stage. In this stage, conflicts become the doorway to greater connection, more profound intimacy. So when you have a talk, exchanging, speaking, and listening with each other, what is really happening when you seem to be listening? Are you simply waiting until it's your turn to speak? Or are you formulating your next argument? You might be thinking of a better story than he or she is telling, a game of one-upsmanship, or why you had a worse day than he's telling you about. Are you just wishing she would stop talking? You might be thinking of the phone call you must make later. I've been in meetings where I discreetly begin making my shopping list because whoever was speaking was so boring. And lately I've seen several instances where someone was texting while another person was speaking to her. Real listening takes focus, time, energy, concentration, caring, and the ability to temporarily set aside my own agenda while I give the speaker my full attention. Real listening is a skill that most of us have to learn and then work at. In our hustle-bustle culture, real listening is rare. Real listening is selfless. Real listening is also incredibly powerful. Real listening fosters connection. I experienced the difference between real listening and average listening just this week. I'm going way out on a limb creating this online program. Hiring those who can help me with the technical aspects of launching an online program is way outside my comfort zone. Imagining reaching thousands of couples with these transformative skills has been my dream for a very long time. But really believing I can do it, well, this is a big stretch. I was longing to tell someone who got it, who knows me and knows what a challenge this is for me. I called one friend who listened politely and was even a bit encouraging, but I didn't feel seen, heard, or valued when she ended the call because she had something else to do and she never called back. A couple of days later, I texted my friend Kim. Kim is a very busy mom and businesswoman, so I asked, "Do you have time for a call today? And do not just add this to your to-do list." She texted me back immediately saying she would call in 30 minutes, and she did. I poured out my excitement as well as my terror to her. She really listened. She understood what a big leap this is for me, but was absolutely certain in her belief that not only could I do it, but would do it successfully. She heard me. She got it. Her listening energized me to keep working on this project the rest of that day and the next. Whenever I think of that call, I smile and move forward. Have you ever experienced that kind of listening? Listening while distracted by chores or thoughts or feelings like boredom may be sufficient in some circumstances, but you cannot maintain a close, connected, intimate relationship like marriage with that level of half-hearted listening. To nurture and maintain the intimate emotional connection we long for from our marriage requires regular times of real listening for the sole purpose of understanding and being understood. This level of listening to understand creates the emotional connection that nurtures the love relationship. It's also the first, most important step to resolving any issue or conflict between you. Brené Brown puts it so well. Connection is what happens when people feel seen, heard, and valued. I believe that immediately after our needs for food, water, and shelter are met, our next most urgent need is for connection, and listening is what gives us connection. You could try to do normal listening with more intensity, which would be a step up from distracted listening. But remember from Module 2 how undependable normal listening is. All of us at times are apt to completely miss the meaning of what our partner is saying. And then, when it's our turn to speak, begin responding to a message that wasn't the one being sent. I love this saying. Communication has not taken place until the message received is identical to the message sent. The only way to avoid misunderstandings and to give our partner the gift of listening to understand is to repeat back what he or she is saying until you are both sure you understand. This doesn't mean you have to repeat back every single thing that is said. Use the listening to understand skill only for those things that are vital for you to clearly understand, or those things you want your partner to really get, or when you have an issue that you both feel deeply about or a big decision to make. Repeating back, if you're not used to it, will feel awkward. Okay, so get over it. Just do it. After their first real listening experience, I've had hundreds of couples say things like, "I never understood that about you," and "I feel heard for the first time in years," or "I feel so close to you right now." After her husband of 45 years heard and repeated back to her, one precious woman said, "I've found my voice." Convinced? So let's get on with it. I'm teaching listening to understand. Other terms for this style of repeating back are called mirroring, as we refer to it in the How to Stay Married book, or conscious listening or reflective listening. These methods of repeating back work extremely well and can be done very unobtrusively, even conversing with strangers. In the last module, I recommended repeating back a compliment or doing any perception check. For example, you appreciate how graciously I hosted the meal for your parents. Repeating back is also appropriate for communications that require accuracy, such as, "You need a gallon of milk and a loaf of bread, right?" Repeating back can be done very mechanically, just parroting the words. That is a technical adherence to the instructions. but there is no intimacy, no connection created by mechanically repeating the words. What makes true listening to understand powerful is when I emotionally put myself in the world of the speaker. I see the world through his eyes. I allow myself to surrender to her point of view. I think and feel as though I am you. I become you for the period of time that I am listening. For example, if I was listening to Jim talk about his son, I'd repeat back using these words with utmost sincerity. It is so important to you to earn the respect of your son. You want him to be proud of you. For that moment of listening, I emotionally became Jim so that I could more authentically feel his deep concern regarding fathering his son. Remember the demonstration you saw in the last module where a back-to-back couple takes turns looking over the partner's shoulder to see what he or she sees? That's what happens, only more intimately, when one partner temporarily surrenders his or her agenda or point of view in order to fully become his or her partner while listening and repeating back. When becoming her, he gets into her skin, sees what she sees, thinks thoughts like hers, and feels her feelings, concerns, and desires. This does not mean that he automatically agrees with her point of view. The goal is not to agree, but to understand. The need for agreement often disappears when your partner is deeply understood, and when your partner deeply understands you. Many times I've seen disagreements dissolve or resolve themselves as two partners take turns listening to understand. When a solution to a problem is still required, even after both have listened to understand, the problem-solving method in Module 8 will do the trick. Watch the following video as I listen with understanding to Kim's childhood memory. Picks you up as well as me.
Okay.
Hi, I'm really happy to introduce my niece and my friend, Kim. She's going to help me demonstrate the skill of listening to understand as she tells me a childhood memory. So, what memory comes to your mind when I ask you that question?
Well, this turned out to be, I think, a significant memory for me. I used to go on bike rides with my dad as a little girl on Mondays. He was a pastor and had Mondays off. And so it was very special to me. I looked forward to it, with my little banana seat bike going off with Dad.
Uh-huh.
And we would go ride for about a mile, and then we'd go to a liquor store and get some candy. Like the candy store, but anyhow. So one Monday, I came around the side of the house, and he was going off on a bike ride with my little sister. And I was like, oh, I thought that was our special thing, And then when they got back, they talked about how great all of our bike rides are, and and I was like, I'm the one you went on the bike rides with, not Kristen, And I can remember the thought coming through my mind as I walked around the side of the house, and they were in the front, on the curb, just leaving from the front house in our neighborhood house. I remember thinking, oh, she's more fun than me. She's more fun, and that's why he's going with her.
So as a little girl, you really looked forward to Mondays, which was your dad's day off.
Yeah.
Because he frequently took you on a bike ride on Monday with him, and you were alone with him. You had him all to yourself. Felt very special. You'd stop at a candy store to get some candy before bike riding back. And then one Monday, you walked around the corner of the house and saw that he was about to leave for a bike ride with your little sister Kristen. And it stunned you. Like, this was a surprise. You thought that these bike rides were your exclusive time with your dad. And it looked like he was choosing Kristen over you. You specifically remember thinking, coming up with this reason that he was going with Kristen instead of you because she was more fun than you.
Yes, she was the baby. She's really, really cute and lively. And I thought that must be the reason. But I also, when they got back and they were talking about their bike ride, he had forgotten that we were the one. I mean, it's like he just forgot that it was our special thing. And it just, I can just remember it slipping in my mind and kind of, oh, he doesn't even remember that it was with me. And I think I've had to overcome that different times in my life, try to, that little message,
So you not only felt kind of shoved aside and your position usurped by Kristen, who was younger and the baby and cute, but it was kind of a double whammy because your dad seemed to forget that the bike rides he'd been on in the past were with you.
Yes, that's it.
Must have really hurt.
It did. I think it hurt more later, I mean, it hurt me then, but it was like this self-acceptance, like, she's more fun, and is that what just thinking there must be a reason, that must be the reason, kind of. Yeah, I remember being upset by it, but it was more internalized than I never even told anybody. I didn't go, hey, that's our thing. I mean, I didn't do any of that. I just kept it all to myself.
So it wasn't anything you talked to either Kristen or your dad about. You didn't say, Dad, do you remember, it was me that went on the bike rides with you. You just internalized the pain, and somewhere down the road it influenced your relationship with your dad and perhaps Kristen, so that there's been sort of a process of having to forgive perhaps both of them and move beyond that pain.
Yeah, I think so. Do you want me to share about that a little bit, or no?
If you want to, only if you'd want to.
Well, the way that I think that comes up later too is in dating, and being or kind of expecting if we're going to break up that it's somebody's more interesting, and that I don't usually I'm not a big drama girlfriend or necessarily, or when I was married, that's not how I am. I'm pretty peaceful, and so I think that's been an insecurity that I had to get over and realize, no, that I'm sure there was some other explanation for what happened back then, but that's the way I took it as a little girl.
So the labeling of yourself as less interesting than Kristen stuck with you. Even when you went into an age where you were dating, if a guy didn't express enough interest or the relationship seemed to fizzle out, the reason you had stuck in your mind was, I must not be interesting enough. And it's really been a hard journey for you to grow out of that self-label that you put on yourself that was so painful. It's taken a lot of work for you to get past that.
Yeah.
Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. What did you notice in the speaker, Kim, as I was listening to understand her childhood memory? What did you notice about my level of attention as I listened to understand? Did you notice that her sharing deepened as she was heard? Can you see yourself listening to understand your partner? So what is the purpose of repeating back? First of all, it proves that you really are listening carefully. Repeating tells the speaker that you are attempting to accurately understand. Listening with this intensity makes the speaker feel valued, and the end result is a closer emotional connection. Real listening means giving up all the stuff we've been doing instead of listening. Real listening requires real effort, but delivers really huge dividends in your relationship. Listening with the full commitment to understanding will feel odd or unnatural, but natural is only what we're used to, our habits, so do it anyway. It will eventually become more comfortable and then feel more natural. You may soon find that really listening feels good to the listener as well as to the speaker. A listening skill similar to this one took our marriage from good and pretty happy to the soulmate connection of our dreams. As with any new habit, however, repeating back does feel strange at first. I encourage you to do it anyway. Emotionally assuming your partner's identity for the purpose of really listening feels awkward to begin with. As you practice by listening to your partner's childhood memory, you may need to take a moment before repeating back to remind yourself you are speaking as though you are him or her. Real listening takes your full attention, something that is sometimes hard to give, but it will bring a huge reward in your marriage as well as any other relationship in which you practice listening to understand. This testimony is from Jim and Sherry. Jim passed away last year, which I was so sorry to hear, but here's what they had to say after learning listening to understand. Jim says, "We were married in August 1999. We had each been married 3 times before. The odds against our marriage lasting were great. Statistically, we were told that we had a 5% chance of making it. We each knew that it would take a lot of communication skills and a lot of counseling to get through our issues. By listening to understand, we were able to get deeper than the data level down to the feeling level. Once we were there and felt each other's concerns, arriving at a solution was easier. I felt Sherry's heart from the inside, her pains, her joys, her hopes. Her happiness and not hurting her became much more important to me." And Sherry says, "I really enjoyed our skilled discussions. I felt understood. I also felt after 12 years of communicating that Jim finally got it. At a deeper level, our individual agendas were less important and pleasing each other was more important. Our issues became solvable. We also liked how quickly we got results and that the solutions tended to be permanent rather than just negotiating settlements that only lasted until one of us reopened the discussion. We now know our marriage will last till death do us part. We can solve any issue that raises its head." And Jim and Sherry's marriage did last. It thrived until death parted them. You will learn how to have skilled discussions in Module 5 and finding solutions that last in Module 8. Mr. Rogers had an amazing gift of creating emotional connection through the impersonal mode of a TV program. My boys used to love watching Mr. Rogers in his neighborhood. I love this wise quote by him: "Listening is the beginning of love." You can print out this module's game page after listening to Lesson 2. Refer to your playbook for simple instructions for listening to understand. For the next several weeks, whenever you practice listening to understand, have those instructions in front of you and follow them step by step. After a few weeks of practicing, you won't need the instructions anymore. For this week, you're only practicing the listening half of a conversation. Speaking and skilled discussions are coming soon. Your playbook has some suggestions for helping you do a great job of listening to understand. I am awestruck to be able to share this with all of you today. My wish is that you use this skill to reconnect in a way that is deeply satisfying to both of you. When you and your partner listen to understand, go on our Facebook page and tell us what it was like. I will be listening. Lesson 2 is about some other ways to use the powerful skill of listening to understand to transform your relationship with your children, your family, your coworkers, and friends. Meet you there.